Hello, everyone. Welcome to the book club. Rebecca, unfortunately, isn't with us tonight, so I'll be hosting instead. We are going to be discussing Crossbones Yard by Kate Rhodes. And there may very well be spoilers, so if you haven't read the book and you intend to do so, please look away now or pause the recording now. Right, so first question, as always, is what did you think of the book? Did you enjoy it?
Absolutely.
I didn't enjoy it at all. No.
Oh, okay. So from the start, we've got two very contrasting views. So what did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy about it?
Well,
okay.
Oh, sorry, Lorraine, you go first.
Okay. Well, as I loved it, I just loved the way it just the writing just got me in, and I could just gallop through it. I loved it so much, so I went out and immediately downloaded the next two books in the series. So that's how much I loved it. I love a strong female character. Yeah, I know there was a few things in there. I don't like to get too technical, but I just found that it flowed really well and I enjoyed it. So, but I'm interested to hear what you didn't like.
I suppose I didn't like it because it didn't seem realistic to me, because she would never be called in to give the advice she was asked to give, because she's not a forensic psychologist. And I thought we were going to read a book about a forensic psychologist, and I felt that it was a bit too wishy-washy. It was a bit too like this might sound, I don't want to try and sound prudish, but I don't read a crime book to have like sex in it. I don't need all sex in it. And I'm thinking that just distracted from the story, and it switched me off, because I thought, oh, for goodness sake, get past this bit. I really didn't enjoy it. I just felt that she was a psychologist, if you like, but she wasn't a forensic psychologist. So I just felt that the police asking her to identify a body, that just wouldn't happen. And if I read a book and it doesn't seem true and it doesn't seem realistic, it switches me off. And to be perfectly honest, I finished it today and I read the last third in about an hour, because I just thought, I can't be bothered with this. I'm not enjoying it. And I think I spoilt it because I'd guessed the ending, so that didn't.
Yeah, I didn't like it because I found it was just really predictable.
Yeah, it was
like it was so obvious, like almost from the start who the killer was. Yeah. And like, when she was going, I can't get in touch with my friend. Yes, she's clearly been kidnapped by the killer, you idiot. It's just like, for a psychologist, she was as thick as mince, really.
But also, for some reason, the previous victim was scarred all over her face, but when they took her friend, they just marked her back a little bit. And I thought, no, I'm sorry. It just didn't seem realistic to me. And if a book doesn't seem realistic, it sort of switches me off. So I didn't enjoy it. No, I won't be reading any more. No.
I thought it was a book that could have done with a little bit of editing. There were too many coincidences. She finds the body. She just happens to run into another victim. Yeah. Her brother's involved. And it turns out that Alvarez is known to her associates, and his wife had been a patient. And although they're psychologists and doctors, nobody seemed to... It was a surprise to them that he was, became a serial killer. And I didn't have problems with Alvarez, being the killer, but she had such interesting stories about her brother, her mother, her childhood, and Lola, who I liked, that she didn't have to have all those extra little coincidences. She's just out running and finds, dead bodies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that made it real. I did not like that part at all. The part I did like, though, is her description of that part of London. And I thought she did a very good job.
I just felt that the detective, the Inspector Burns, was an idiot because she wanted it more than he did. And he was supposed to be a detective of so many years experience, and he was rubbish, basically, but no. So I didn't enjoy the book because it just didn't seem believable. Why would an inspector with all these years experience go to this woman who was just someone who counseled people who had anorexia to solve a serial killer murder just because she found the body? It just didn't make sense to me. But
I was disappointed in the way the ending went. It just seemed like it was very rushed, the way they kind of were like, oh, it's him, it's Alvarez. And then they never went into kind of explaining like why he did it or how he got to that place or anything. It just seemed like it was all crammed in the last few pages of the book. You know, it was just, I liked it up until the ending. And then I felt like the ending just went way too fast and was just kind of all tied up with a bow with no real explanation for why he would have gone that way.
Yeah, you've anticipated my question, because I was going to ask, how satisfying did you find that the ending was?
Yeah.
So not, clearly.
Not.
Anybody else? Who else liked it, or liked it up to a certain point? Or
I think I liked it up to a certain point. I found it extremely easy to read, but I wanted more. It just never, it smoldered all the way through for me, and it never entirely caught fire. I found her reading really easy to read. I liked her writing style. I thought there were a couple of fascinating characters. I loved Will. I found him absolutely fascinating, the brother, whenever he was there. As somebody else just said just now, Lola, really enjoyable character to read, but I just wanted a bit more punch from the whole thing.
And Kathy, you were just gesticulating.
Yes, I actually was reading another book and picked it up and read a couple pages and then couldn't put it down. But like Chris, I felt like it just didn't quite. The part that really annoyed me right from the beginning is that Alvarez, was going to be the love interest, and I find that dark, brooding man type. I don't think women really go for that type. We like a humorous man. So that part, it kind of got to me. So I was very disappointed in that love interest. So I was actually not disappointed that he was the bad guy. But I figured it out, not part way through the book, but once the brother went nuts when he came to, then I was already starting to wonder, is it Alvarez? And then when Will went nuts in the hospital, it was like, oh, yep, that's him. It's him. Yeah. So I usually can't figure it out. So I was surprised that I could figure it out.
So quite a few of you have said you found it slightly predictable. Yeah. Wendy.
Yeah, I really did, and it was a shame, because I do agree with what Chris said. It's really readable, and her style was really good, really engaging. So I kind of got to the end of the book thinking, oh, this was so nearly a really, really good read. It was a bit, but it was, and I think, the editing with a good editor to suggest some changes and certainly some depth to this love interest, because as soon as that came up, I'm thinking, why is she interested in him? He's appalling. He's absolutely rude and horrible. And why would you, no, I'm sorry, that's completely unreal. And I think that is, I could never suspend my disbelief long enough to really enjoy the style. And I mean, she's got it, but it just needs some polish, and somebody just reality checking some of these things. But this was her first novel, I believe. So I haven't read anything else that she's written, but maybe she had better editing or more practice, or just got to be more experienced in what she was doing. Because her style was good, I would read another to see if that developed, because she'd got something, and it was so disappointing that it didn't come good. But I did find the storyline very predictable, I'm afraid. It was something that I've read before in various guises and just thought, well, it's him, isn't it? And then the brother going nuts, it's like, oh yeah, it's him. And nothing surprised me. It was a shame.
I think it was, though. I mean, it was easy to read. You know, like it wasn't a slog to get through. You could read it, but and you know, I hadn't realized it was her first book. And actually, I think for a first book, you know, it's way better than I could do. So well done to her. But yeah, I did find it predictable and tiresome in places. You know, like, and Andrea was saying, not real in places. You know, like Alvarez was their client because it's, you know, seeing the psychologists, and then they just invite him to dinner, and like, do you do that? I would have thought that was some sort of professional boundary. So it felt like things were being written in order to make the plot sort of move along, and other plot lines which were really, really interesting were sort of like just not followed up. I would have liked to have read more about her family and things like that. But then if it's first in a series, maybe she's building it and she covers that more. You know, you can't cover everything in one book. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, and I have to say, I do wonder if, because who was it who was saying there was too much additional stuff going on, you know, that it would have been enough if it had just focused maybe on her family or other things, and there was just too much going on. And I wonder if that was perhaps what the editor said, you know, make it more crimey or make it more whatever, you know, investigation related or something like that, rather than a psychological thriller. So yeah, and she was a poet before she turned to crime writing. So yeah, it was her first book, and she's also written another series. Has anybody read anything else by her?
No.
Because she's got another series set on the Scilly Islands, the Ben Kitto series, which I really recommend. I really like that. I enjoy that one more than this series, probably. Yeah. So what did you think about the science bit? Because, you know, we wanted to read something with forensic science. Did you feel there was enough of it in the book? Were you?
I mean, I liked it. I liked it because it's set in a part of London I know very well, and so I was like, oh, I know that place, and so I love that because it makes it more real. But I kept saying to myself, I thought with some sort of forensic sort of book, and they set her up to be, but she clearly wasn't, or wasn't in the frame. But like the others, I found it an easy read, a good read. The characters I sort of liked. I was a bit sort of, when Alvarez was touching her and stuff, and I was just like, this wouldn't happen. But in recent events, you know, you sort of think, oh Christ, maybe it does happen, you know. So, you know, but it quite predictable. But it was all right. I liked it mainly because it was set where I know the area, and I could follow it through the streets that she was talking about.
I don't think forensically there was anything much to kind of go on, really.
There was nothing.
That I'd completely, until you said that, Marina, I'd completely forgotten it was supposed to be a forensic crime book, because it didn't present like that. And the bit, you know, her mindset, it just felt very well, it wasn't deep, shall we say, and it just sort of skated across the surface. So it's awful, because I'm finding lots of things I didn't like about it, and I did kind of quite enjoy the ride because she can write. So it's a kind of big thing to be able to write, and all credit to her. And I'm interested to hear that she has another series, and perhaps I would try one of those and see whether that kind of had more reality for me, because I kept being jerked out of reality and I appreciate somebody said, yes, that would happen, you know, have you read the newspapers recently? But actually it just felt that she would be saying, hang on a minute, you know, should this be happening? And she didn't. She just went along with the whole thing. I thought, who would do that? Who would just say, oh, this is fine. Oh, I quite fancy him. That's all right then. No, it isn't. Have some thoughts about that. So it just sort of drew me out. I think even at the end, one of the final scenes where she's in the hospital and she puts on her torn dress that has been part of this crime. And I'm thinking, surely they'd have taken that for forensic evidence, maybe. But she puts it back on and I'm thinking, no, this is all wrong. So it's that stopped me from getting into it and really enjoying it. But had that all been sorted out for reality, I would have really enjoyed it. So, but I wouldn't call it a forensic novel, no.
Oh.
I think from a forensic psychological view, it was interesting that at least twice in the book she said, oh, I know I shouldn't do this. And one of the instances was when she opened the door at 2 a.m. to Cleese because she thought it was somebody else. I was thinking, wow, even at 2 a.m. you don't check to see you live in the city. And that I thought was kind of funny. And it was to me a good example of why a doctor should not treat a relative, because she was clueless when it came to Will. But Lola, who had no academic training in psychology, was able to communicate with Will and get him to change and, you know, at least bathe, get his hair cut, clean him up, and somehow reach him. And it just seemed really odd. You know, I just was really crazy. And as to the sex, how many people have such great sex with a choice of people? It's like, and she just happened to look like one of the victims. And that was the other thing, you know, she was petite and blonde, like, you know, the victims. And it's, wow. And her brother just happened to live with the serial killers, et cetera, et cetera. And when she received the note, one of the threatening notes, and she identified the handwriting, and Alvarez was there, he opened the note and read it before he placed it in the evidence bag. Well, as we know now, he was going to dispose of it and not hand it in. But I would have thought, you know, wouldn't they have said, don't open the note, we'll check it for DNA, for fingerprints, etc. Don't contaminate it. And so that was strange to me.
Yeah, and someone under house protection seemed to wander off all the time.
No kidding.
I thought we were going to find out that Alvarez had maybe brought a coffee for, was it mead, and put sleeping pills in it or something, because he fell asleep so early in the evening and she left, and, you know, and that was that. I thought that was, wow.
It was all very convenient.
Yeah.
Very,
I mean,
very
predictability was like the door onto the flats was always happened to. I can't close it tonight. Oh, lo and behold, there's a man at the door, sort of. You know, and that matters a little bit. The moment you read it, you thought, oh, here we go. What's going to happen now? Sort of touch, you know, rather than some other way.
So how did you
feel?
And
the woman never seemed to be at work either. I wish I had as much time off as she did. And you're thinking, why on earth are they calling her in for that? And, yeah, I wanted to know more about what she did with her other patients, I think.
Yeah.
So a couple of you have referenced the sex. So how do you feel about having romance in a crime novel? Does it, I think this has been a bit of a chatting point on Twitter as well recently. Does it sort of, you know, does it not have a place there at all, or do you not mind it, or?
I think for me, I prefer the will they, won't they to the actual, you know, culmination, shall we say. I mean, you know, Tony Hill, Carol Jordan, that kind of thing just kept going and going and going, and just another problem in the way all the time. And I thought that was absolutely brilliantly done, because it was interesting. But this, I mean, this felt a little bit Mills and Booney. It was just kind of, oh wow, stars, yay, terrific, you know, let's do it. And that, it's like, no, sorry, no. And if we get a lot of mechanics, I'm not saying this book, because she didn't do that, but some crime books that do want to put, you know, all the sexual mechanics in, and I just sort of think, that's not really adding to my story at all. And I can use my imagination. I don't need it laid out. So I think it's difficult to do it well, and not many writers achieve it. So if it's done badly, it's appalling and just throws you out of the story completely. So my feeling is, if you can't do it really, really well and really cleverly, then don't do it at all. Just leave it out. But if you want some romance, you know, some sparkle, I think that's good. That's a good thing. That's adds to the characters, it adds to the interest, but it has to be done lightly, I think.
I think it has to fit into the narrative in some way. So, like, I mean, both Sean the surgeon and Alvarez were horrible people. Like, you know, they were really, in terms of romance, they were both clearly very odd. And it reminded me of the book we read before Christmas, where they were in the country house, and then it was a murder mystery, and then all of a sudden she's in the caravan and there's this really weird sex scene. And, you know, it just, like, it didn't gel with the flow of the books for me. So I don't mind if there's romance or characters or whatever, but it has to feel like a logical part of the book, and it didn't feel like that. It felt more like a plot device, like, oh, we're going to direct you towards, it might be crazy Sean the surgeon, but actually it's Alvarez, you know. So I felt like Sean was there as a sort of alternative bad guy that it could possibly be. So yeah, it just didn't ring very true for me. I think to be honest, I think that book we read at Christmas with the weird caravan scene has sort of put me off sex in mystery novels for a while, because that was very odd.
That was very bad, actually, too. And
So,
I didn't have so much problem with her picking bad partners, because oftentimes people will pick a career in an area that they're having problems with. You know, nurses often times have problems in their family. It didn't strike me as odd that she was picking poor partners, because she was in that field. It struck me as believable there. The two guys, I've never met people like this. I just find it hard.
I just don't think it added to the story, and in fact it detracted from the story, because well, maybe it was just me, but all I thought was, well, let's get this scene over with so we can actually get back to the book. No, I just felt like, maybe as others have said, that if you're really good at writing it works. It just didn't work in this book, because all it did was make you think, well, let's get past this scene, because this is not what I want from this book. But
yeah.
Hello, Norman.
Hello there. Sorry, I'm trying to look after my grandson. Sorry, I'm late.
That's fine. Don't want to put you on the spot, but how did you feel about the book, or anybody else who hasn't had a chance to tell us about it yet?
I enjoyed the book very much. It was helped my interest. I mean, it wasn't exactly a literary feat. It was reasonably well written, nothing fantastic, but I did enjoy it as such, you know. And it wasn't so much a page turner as I've got to finish it in time, but no, it was good. I enjoyed it, really. Yeah, characters were good.
Yeah, this was my next question, was about the characters. How did you feel about the characters? So first of all, Alice herself as the main character, and then maybe the secondary ones.
Yeah, well, I thought Alice, she was very descriptive about it. I felt like you knew her from the beginning to the end. I could understand her and everything. Obviously, I felt sorry for her for what she had been going through. But yeah, no, I thought she was a well drawn out character. The others are not so memorable, to be honest. But yeah, it was, as I say, it was a good book. but unless it's a brilliant book, I can't really remember very much about it.
So how did the others feel about the secondary characters? I think some of you mentioned Lola. Was that the most memorable one? Maybe?
I was just going to say, I quite liked Lola. I thought she was this constant distraction in the background, got on well with her brother Will, was always at it with her boyfriend in the next room, sort of touch, off to shows and bits and pieces. So yeah, she was a nice, constant character in the background, I thought.
I agree. I think Lola was perhaps the most real feeling character in the book for me, because she was totally in character all the time. And she had her good points and her not so good points. And she was kind of mad, but warm. And I thought, yeah, actually, this is a character I could spend time with. I liked this character. I liked the way she was with the other people. So I think she was the best one for me. I mean, the two men were just not real for me at all.
I liked Burns though. Burns I thought was good. I like the way that she described him, and you could almost kind of, when I remember she was describing him once, like getting out of a chair and saying something like the hydraulic didn't work or something like that. Like you could just kind of picture him trying to get up and then not. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I thought I would have liked his character to be kind of fleshed out a little bit more.
Yes, I think I would agree with you there. Absolutely. Yeah. That it had the makings of being a good character, but it wasn't quite developed enough.
Right.
For me. But yes, there was definitely, I mean, that was interesting. When Burns was in the scene, you were very conscious that Burns was in the scene. And I think that was done well. But a little bit more, I think, to make him deeper. Yeah.
The plot was quite easily to spot, doesn't it? I mean, there was no surprises at the end as to who the murderer was. And I think the attempt to try and build up tension with the ex-boyfriend, it didn't work at all. I didn't find that believable, but as I say, it was a good read.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what everybody said, that they found it quite predictable in terms of the plot. How did you feel about the subject matter itself? The sort of serial killer, mutilating whatever women and so on. Because I remember the last time we discussed it at the previous book club many years ago, we said, we're getting a little bit tired of this trope. There's only so much that you can do with it without starting. So I wonder if perhaps something of the predictability came from that, because it's, something that we've seen so many times before, both in film and in books.
That's what I was thinking. I am still very, very tired of the serial killer motif in books. There aren't that many of them in real life. Not that they don't exist, but there aren't that many of them.
Get caught.
And I thought that I think it's too easy to just have someone be a serial killer instead of invent or work on a believable motive for killing. It's pretty easy to do a serial killer in that sense. So yeah, that was part of the predictability of the book for me.
And if you, where there have been very successful serial killers in novels, the backstory has supported why this particular person would have acted in this particular way. There's always been some kind of, rationale, which whilst it might not be sane, was believable, was credible, that there would be somebody doing this for a reason. This felt a little bit following the crowd, and yeah, I don't think that really did it.
Yeah, that comes to what you were saying earlier about it was a bit too quickly wrapped up, maybe, and so basically he was just insane. It's like, is that a good enough motive?
the thing is, in real life, maybe that is what happens, but in fiction we expect more, don't we? We do expect more thought behind this. It just felt like it was, oh, I'm going to write a serial killer novel, so who's my serial killer? Oh yes, well, it's him and he's doing it, he's mad. That's fine. It's not really enough. A little bit of an easy option, perhaps, but a first novel again. And it is something that an editor, I think, would perhaps have been saying, you need to give this some credible backstory to make this work, because people don't just end up being serial killers for no reason, and not in fiction anyway.
And why the crosses? Like, they never went into why he carved crosses all over their bodies. Like, there was just no, again, it wasn't developed enough for me, it seemed.
But very much because serial killers have to have a motif, so that was it, picked at random a bit. Yeah. I was waiting for the kind of religious connotations with the crosses, and there's so much you can do with crosses in fiction, and none of it happened. Hey-ho.
Was he like doing a copycat killing? Because wasn't it?
Yeah,
right.
He was doing a copycat killing.
Yeah.
Killings, and so maybe he'd worked on the case. I can't remember if he worked on the case.
No, he had.
Yeah.
But then they never explained why the Bensons carved crosses into people. Do you know? It just.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a first novel, because I was thinking the editor didn't do his job very well, or her job very well. It could do with a much more precise editing, and it would moved it along a little bit. But if she's a first author, and I can a first book for her, rather, I can understand that to some extent.
I really thought up until the dinner party that I kept on hoping that Alvarez, that his wife had died because she had been a victim of a crime, and that had, done something, but no, she just had the brain tumor. But that whole sequence, and how she was set up on a blind date by another psychologist and his wife, and they had known the family so intimately, and they missed all the signs, and it just was crazy for me.
Yeah, that's the bit where I was thinking, I don't know about this forensic science bit here. They're clearly missing all the clues. Although, having said that, I do know a psychiatrist who, is very self-absorbed. So I don't know, maybe there are some professionals like that. The other thing I wanted to ask you was about about Alice as a character. Did you feel she was a strong character who might have potential to develop in the next books, or you thought she made some really poor choices in terms of partners?
There was certainly a bit of background about her, wasn't there? In her childhood, was it she was locked in she couldn't go in confined spaces because she was locked under the stairs, or she hid under there because her father was quite abusive, and her brother was. I thought there's a lot of depth, potential depth to her character, which can come out, I presume, probably in later novels, maybe.
I definitely had the feeling that she was being presented as a serial character throughout a series, and I was interested in her because of that background and the possibilities for development. But I was a little bit thrown by her actions being so unwise. There was a bit of me thinking, in the next novel, has she grown up a bit? Has she kind of come to live in the real world a little bit more, or is it still going to be this? I'm going to make, as a writer, I'm going to make my character do whatever's convenient for me to move the plot on, because that really doesn't lend itself to a successful series, in my view. But she definitely had potential, and as I say, because I liked the style. I just thought, yes, I'd give another one a go, perhaps later in the series if there was one, and if not, a later book by the same writer, because I think there was definitely something there. There was enough that made me want to carry on reading it. And when I finished it, I thought, well, you know, that was a bit of a disappointment, but the writing still kind of said something. And I thought, yes, I could spend more time reading this style. I just want a better story. And the characters developed more and being more real, more grounded in reality. But that is something I think a new writer is quite often, you know, it's a problem, isn't it? Those people amongst us who are writers, it is a problem because you do need things to happen for your plots, and you have got to find a way for those to happen. But it has to feel as though it's arising out of the characters, not because the writer thinks it's convenient for the plot. So it's a learning curve, perhaps.
Yeah. So
I'm
would you
looking forward
read?
to seeing her develop. I'm looking forward to seeing her develop as a character. I did initially, I loved her forthrightness and her crazy choices. Hello, I do the same thing. And but you know, and the other thing about Alvarez, towards the end, when you know he's been so immersed in that in the case that he was covering, and with the grief of his wife, you do go crazy. I know, you know, she had a brain tumor and it was probably coming on for some time, and I was so young. But I sort of think, you know, no, I got the plot there. But the heading on to the next novel, I was just pre-reading a bit of information, and Burns is much more fleshed out, and I'd really like to know about him. I remember I used to work in the police department decades ago, and I remember certain detectives who, you know, used to sort of envelope themselves to get into cars and that kind of thing, and drank too much beer, and you know, was so, they looked like they were very old and they'd had enough of it, and they just couldn't seem to move on anymore. And they, you know, I've had enough of this case, I don't even want to know about it anymore, I've got my theory and that is it, and I won't shift. So I sort of know that kind of thing. So that's where I thought it was good. But I am looking forward to seeing her develop in the next, I think there's about 5 novels. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to that. But I really do like a series. And always you go back to the first one after you've hit mid-range and you think, yeah, I didn't see that coming. So, you know, a writer develops as they go along. So I'm looking forward to, you know, getting on board with Kate Rhodes a bit more.
Okay. So that was my question. Are you going to be reading any more, to all of you?
I'll give it one more shot.
Yeah, me too.
What the next book? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to try the other series.
Yes, yes, I really recommend, because it's like a closed, well, not closed room, but because it's on a small island, you know, it's a limited number of suspects and so on. So it's kind of got that appeal to it as well. And that one is with a detective who does the detecting rather than a forensic scientist who isn't very much of a forensic scientist.
It doesn't say much for the police department, does it? That they could have Alvarez working among them all the time and no one had any suspicion that he was a bit weird.
Well, again, rather true to current affairs. Yeah.
The world is full of weirdos, and thank God for them all.
That's true.
Okay, well, I'll stop recording then.